let us all do we can to build a better future.
Going to be running in the Democratic primary. And to be very clear here, folks, which is something I'm finding very interesting. And again, when this video gets clipped, and perhaps maybe tomorrow, things might change. But as it stands right now, for the Democratic Party, there are only two contenders running for the nomination, and that is Marianne Williamson and RFK Jr. Biden, who's the current president, still has yet to make the announcement officially, even though everyone is saying that he is going to be running. What's taking them so long to make this announcement? Already, there are four contenders in the Republican primary as well, one of which being Donald Trump. It says a lot right now. Now, as it stands, and if you've been watching this show, we understand that a lot of you are burnt out by electoral politics, especially with the aftermath of the 2016 and 2020 Democratic primary, especially with what happened with Bernie Sanders. However, we will be covering this election because, let's face it, it's going to be newsworthy, and we need to give an analysis and in-depth coverage of these people who are running for the nomination. Now, again, I'm not going to vote Democrat. However, one thing that I'm going to keep on asking during this primary, and I think my answer might be given to me sooner rather than later, to the two contenders that are running for the nomination right now, until the Democrats pick their nominee of choice or Biden chooses to run to the race, what I would ask politely to RFK Jr. and yes, even Marianne Williamson is, what are you prepared to do in regards to the DNC and its shenanigans, especially when it comes down to election fraud and rigging the primaries? We saw this happen not once, but twice. This isn't open for debate. This is something that did happen to Bernie Sanders, plus the endless smears. Case in point was what happened to Tulsi Gabbard. Now, RFK Jr. is running. And as I talked about this on yesterday's show, all the articles were more or less click, copy, paste journalism, either acknowledging his announcement to run or that he's an anti-vaxxer. All of them are lackluster and pretty irrelevant at this point. These headlines in regards to RFK Jr.'s announcement. Now, this is going to be a very interesting election cycle. I hope maybe things will be different down the road. And again, I want to encourage anyone that might even have a signal of hope of maybe you might like one of the two candidates that are running in the election. Just remember what happened in 2016 and 2020. Please don't part with your money, especially for any politician, be it Democrat, Republican, or independent, unless you really feel like it's worth your time. Because again, most likely the all-time thing that always happens is that the politicians always backpedal, flip-flop, or become huge, major disappointments. So I want to play just a couple of videos from corporate media, from CNN, and yes, Fox News, in regards to Robert Kennedy Jr.'s announcement that he was going to be running for the Democratic nomination. Now, I want to pull up this first video. Again, shout out to Case Study QB. If you're not following him on Twitter, please do so. He is still wrongly being censored. He also has his own YouTube channel and Odyssey page. So like I said, please support all independent media, support Case Study QB, because he sits through this stuff so the rest of us don't have to. Keep up the great work, Case. So let's check this out.
Happening now, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is about to officially announce his challenge to President Joe Biden for the 2024 Democratic nomination. It's happening on this stage. You can see right behind me. Of course, we should note that Biden has not yet officially launched his re-election campaign. Robert Kennedy hails from one of America's most well-known political families. He is the son of former Attorney General, Senator, and presidential candidate Bobby Kennedy, the nephew of President John F. Kennedy. It is worth noting, though, that Robert Kennedy has not received resounding support from his family. And that's partly due to his history of controversial statements. He has long promoted vaccine skepticism. He authored a book he called The Real Anthony Fauci, and he came under fire last year for invoking Nazi Germany in an anti-vaccine speech.
All right, now here's the thing. There's a lot of this controversy surrounding RFK Jr. However, again, remember, this is corporate media. CNN, MSNBC, and yes, even Fox News, all of them have their own spin and take things out of context. Again, corporate media likes to really play the screw around game. Now, I say this, always be critical of every single goddamn politician. I know one thing here. I can promise this here for Hard Lens. When it comes down to covering this election, especially when it starts intensifying, no hero worshiping, just the straight facts and looking into the candidates. I encourage my audience to do the same too, to be critical of everyone that's running and realize that this is a game of deception, okay? Even if this person is saying things you agree with, let's say they got a great campaign, great PR, and they are able to set up huge rallies. Always be critical of these elected officials because they're people, they're humans, and none of them should be viewed as untouchable or upon a pillar. They all got their flaws.
Even in Hitler's Germany, you could cross the Alps into Switzerland. You can hide in an attic like Anne Frank did. Today, the mechanisms are being put in place that will make it so none of us can run and none of us can hide.
Now, again, the reason why I was paused before then and why I want to bring this up here now is because, okay, CNN, you're indicating he was, what, connecting Nazi Germany to his campaign. What he's saying is like, hey, there's mechanisms being put in place to which the system is looking over us. Big Brother is always watching. You know, the way you just deliver that, CNN, it's kind of misleading, but it's not the first time you've done that, CNN.
He also insisted that the man convicted of assassinating his father did not actually fire the shot that killed him. Most of his family seems frustrated with this campaign. Siblings Chris Kennedy and Rory Kennedy, along with cousins Bobby Shriver and Patrick Kennedy, have already thrown.
Just a side note, a little bit of the old school crew here. If you've been with Hard Lens Media from the beginning, especially when we were on radio, I actually interviewed Chris Kennedy a long time ago when he was running for governor in 2018. I just got to say I wasn't too impressed with his campaign, but I'll save that story for another day.
Support behind President Biden for 2024. His sister, Kathleen Kennedy Townsend, did not want to talk about her brother's presidential run, but her position seems clear. In 2019, she co-wrote an article that criticized her brother's anti-vaccine rhetoric. With me now, CNN political director David Challey. And David, this announcement we were just looking at, right?
And again, they're going to be talking about Chris Kennedy and him being an anti-vaxxer. That's going to be the one thing they're going to keep on bringing up over and over again. It's like that kid at school that constantly keeps on making the same joke by saying, oh, you got dirty shoes. Oh, you got dirty shoes. They got the same joke over and over again to where it's played out. Do you have anything else, CNN? Do you have anything else? And again, this is my advice, just a friendly advice, free advice to anyone with the RFK Jr. campaign. And yes, even the Marianne Williamson campaign. Do not expect corporate media to be your friend. You will need to run your campaigns like Trump. I know I said it, because you're going to have to treat corporate media like the punks that they are. If Donald Trump can get corporate media to focus on his empty podium and to follow him around like, oh, simple simps, you got to do the same thing too. Otherwise, your campaigns are going to be a complete epic failure.
There is in Boston. Robert Kennedy trying to perhaps rekindle some of that Kennedy magic in Massachusetts. But how should we be looking at this, especially when one of the people promoting this candidacy, or at least talking about it the most, is Steve Bannon?
Yeah, Steve Bannon, you're right. Donald Trump's former senior strategist. He was saying that if Kennedy was running in the Republican primary, he'd probably be third in the polls in the Republican primary with Trump and DeSantis. I don't know if that's the kind of endorsement he was looking for. You noted some of his siblings, John. I would just also note his cousin Caroline Kennedy is serving as a Biden ambassador, as is his aunt Vicki Kennedy, Ted Kennedy's widow, is serving as an ambassador in this administration. And Joe Kennedy III, we just saw, went over to Ireland with President Biden. So, and he's the special envoy for the Biden administration. So there are a lot of Biden supporters, many more so in the Kennedy clan than there are Robert Kennedy Jr. supporters.
Yeah, I'm actually watching some of the announcement video that they put together here. He's really leaning in to the Kennedy family history here with video of his father.
So here's the thing. All right, we're going to stop this video here because there's only just like 4 more seconds in here. So this is what corporate media is going to be pouncing on, especially for RFK Jr. Now, again, what's interesting to point out, as that video did come out yesterday, and that is, again, Biden has yet to make his announcement. The Democrats might not have their old boy Biden in the game just yet. And this calls into question of how the establishment is going to get their nominee if it's not going to be Biden. You would think by now Biden's going to throw his hat in the race. I'm kind of surprised he's taking this long. Even Bill Clinton and Obama didn't take this long. But nonetheless, this is what corporate media is going to do to these candidates, Marianne Williamson and RFK Jr. They're going to get the same kind of treatment that happened to Bernie, Tulsi, Andrew Yang, and hell, even Marianne Williamson went through that ringer too. So I have to say, if these politicians are not ready for this amount of criticism from the establishment, or is that how they're being covered, their campaigns are going to end before they even begin. I want to play this clip of Fox News talking about RFK Jr. right now getting at least 14% in the latest poll, surging ahead of Marianne Williamson, Kyle and Ryan.
There's been a systematic attack on our middle class, and the coup de grace was a lockdown. Lockdown was the biggest shift in wealth in human history. I blame President Trump for the lockdown. People in authority lie, and the government now lies to us. We all know it. One of the principal missions of my campaign and of my presidency is going to be to end that division.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr. throwing his name in the ring for the Democratic run for president, challenging, not yet in the race for re-election, President Biden. But you look at a new poll out.
And I'm already seeing here in the live stream chat, people are saying, wow, Fox aired his speech. People are saying they're afraid that maybe RFK Jr. could sheepdog people into the Democratic Party. And that's something, again, all of you need to be kept aware of. All right. Bernie Sanders did that not once, but twice. I would urge RFK Jr. to really consider having the option of running an independent if, well, the Democrats play their same games again. Again, who knows how serious Marianne and RFK Jr. are, but it's just something to take into account. But what I do find interesting is that part of the speech, compare and contrast it to how Fox News covered it and how CNN covered it. Now, again, these are both corporate media outlets, and they all have their own narrative and biases and agendas that they want to share with their viewing audience specifically.
By USA Today, Suffolk University, and there is a breakdown here that Kennedy is already at 14%, which is not an insignificant number in any poll as you're starting a nomination against the sitting president in your party. Let's start there with our panel, Fox News senior political analyst Juan Williams, Morgan Ortagus, former State Department spokesperson, and Bill McGurn, columnist for the Wall Street Journal. You know, Bill, obviously the Kennedy name carries a lot of clout in Democratic circles. At 14%, is the Biden team saying, wait a second?
Well, someone was going to get into the race. It's notable. It's not, you know, a sitting senator or governor yet. I don't think the Kennedy name is what it used to be. I'm old enough to remember when Ted Kennedy challenged Jimmy Carter for presidency. And Jimmy Carter was very weak then. And people thought Kennedy was going to steamroll over him, and he didn't. Carter won. It's kind of a lesson that the sitting president, no matter how weak he appears, in his party has a lot of cards to play. So, you know, if I get the sense that Joe Biden's like Clint Eastwood and Gran Torino, kind of.
No. Whoa. Hey, Fox News. Let me sit you down here, okay? Because Clint Eastwood was talking to an empty chair, thinking that it was Obama there at one Republican convention not too long ago. Okay, this is during the Obama presidency. I think that was Clint Eastwood. That could have been. Anyways. Let's be clear here, okay? Stop comparing presidents to characters in big screen cinema. All right. These politicians may be actors, but they're not the big old tough guys that we see on the big screen. I really hate that. Like, oh yeah, they're just like this character. No, they're not. No, they're not. Stop that. Stop it. Get help. Get help immediately.
I'm upset with the kids for wanting him out of his house and the grandkids, and I don't think he's going to go.
Juan?
And I don't think.
Do you feel lucky, Jack? Do you know the thing, Jack? Hey, Jack, where's the ice cream?
Robert Kennedy is the one to remove him.
Yeah, I think, I think Bill's so right on this. And let me just start by saying, what a tremendous legacy that family has, not only the former president, but Bobby Kennedy, the father of Robert Kennedy, the guy that's just announced his candidacy. Bobby Kennedy's a hero to a lot of people. And that's why I say it makes me sad to see it come to this, because I think if this was an election, a primary limited to people named Kennedy, he'd lose. You saw in that poll, Brett, Marianne Williamson has 5%. So, Bill's point that this is not the Kennedy to really pose a serious challenge to President Biden, I think holds. And you also have to keep in mind, he's damaged by the fact that people like Steve Bannon have said he's the candidate of ultimate chaos, the intentional chaos to bring.
How quickly the establishment always forgets how elections can play out and how people choose their nominee. Now, look, it wasn't too long ago in 2016 where all of corporate media was dismissing Donald Trump, saying he couldn't do it. He couldn't pull it off. He's going to be destroyed by legacy politicians or up-and-coming new stars in the Republican Party, and Trump decimated them all. Now, the thing is, Americans like somebody who's a maverick, somebody who's outside the system or will challenge it from within. The thing is, look, when you look past being team red or team blue, if you really sit down and talk to voters, a lot of us have things in common. People tend to forget that there were plenty of Republican voters and conservatives and libertarians that would have voted for Bernie Sanders, that liked his policies, that want to see them implemented, and still do to this day. Yes, corporate media and the two-party system has successfully divided us, but I will not sit here and underestimate any candidate. Trump taught me that lesson. Hell, he should have taught all of us that lesson. But the thing is, what's going to be working against RFK Jr. isn't his statements about vaccines or people who are endorsing him. I mean, let's face it. All politicians have controversy surrounding people who would endorse them. That's in the Democratic Party and Republican Party. We've seen so many examples. I could be here all day giving these examples. However, the biggest challenge that will be facing the Democratic candidates, RFK Jr. and yes, Marianne Williamson, is a thing called superdelegates. Now, again, Bernie Sanders was popular, especially let's look at 2016. He was getting a lot of support from regular voters. But what he was missing was the support of the superdelegates. Again, the Republican primary is going to be more Democratic as, again, it's voters that pick who they want as their nominee. There's no Republican superdelegates. Democrats got that. That's what they have to contend with. And what the Democratic Party is going to have to probably deal with, let's say RFK Jr.'s campaign hypothetically takes off. Not only will there be potentially a lot of buzz surrounding his campaign, and yes, I want to even put in Marianne Williamson's campaign in here too, hypothetically. Let's say they're getting a lot of buzz. There's a lot of support, and the establishment candidate isn't getting all the support that they want. Again, we could see history repeat itself to where, again, people dem exit. So, again, my criticism of the candidates, especially RFK Jr., is what are you prepared to do in regards towards what the DNC might throw at you and your campaign, how they might smear your supporters and volunteers. It's one thing to say, I like what RFK Jr. is saying, and shout out to Sabrina from RBN, Revolutionary Blackout Network, for covering that event. If you didn't check out her live stream, be sure to check it out. She was also on Kim Iverson's show as well, giving her thoughts on RFK's announcement. If these candidates aren't ready for the election fraud that will take place, and it will, we're just going to be wasting our time again. I understand a lot of you are burnt out by electoral politics, but we have to also look at how corporate media is going to be spinning this, because corporate media always has their own agenda and initiative. And it seems like right now they're on the warpath to smear RFK Jr. for his stance on the COVID-19 crisis and many other issues, and how he is not being supported by his family. That's the one thing they're going to be harping on, all while ignoring many of his policy decisions or what he's going to be running for. It's important for us to look at this through an open mind and to remove these blinders that are blinding us to the fact that, okay, Team Red and Team Blue is running for the election. We got to be smarter than this. So I wish all these candidates luck in their race. Good luck to RFK Jr., especially running in a Democratic primary. But if nothing fundamentally changes at all, you're just wasting voters' time. And I dread to think if people once again get entrapped in another Bernie Sanders-like hype where it leads to nothing.